Chapter 14, IT Security Policy Enforcement. Let's take a look at the learning objective and key concepts. The learning objective is to describe issues related to information system security, policy implementation, and enforcement. Some of the key concepts are organizational monitoring and enforcement of ISS policies, policy enforcement as it relates to compliance laws, legal implications of ISS policy enforcement, and who is ultimately accountable for risk, threats, and vulnerabilities. Organizational support for IT security policy enforcement. Failure to follow policies can lead to regulatory noncompliance. That can cost you money. Failure to follow up and resolve issues can result in lawsuits. Again, that costs you big money in corporate world. And enforcement of security policies needs to be ingrained throughout the organization. Enforcing policies is not a one-person role. Decide what the organization wants to accomplish through policy enforcement, and recognize conflicts and work with employees to overcome them. Executive management sponsorship. Executives can overcome objections and persuade an organization to adopt policies. Executives can send a clear message that there's zero tolerance for ignoring security policies, and executive support is key to security policy enforcement. Here we look at trying to balance the scale of governance versus management organizational structure. On the governance processes side, you have monitor, direct, and evaluate. On the management process side, you have plan, build, run, and monitor. This is just a quick overview of how governance and management work together within the COBIT 5.0 framework. As you see by the figure, governance sets strategic direction, and management executives run day-to-day operations. Governance, as defined by COBIT 5, ensures that enterprise objectives are achieved and directs management to execute. It's these governance processes that balance competing interests, such as the business needs to make a profit and the customer needs to buy services at a fair price. Governance sets the direction for management to follow. It's then up to management to achieve its goals in alignment with the direction set by the governance processes. Management is responsible for running day-to-day operations. Both organizational structures monitor activity. We're going to review the hierarchical organization approach to security policy implementation. Here's a look at the gateway committees. Project Committee reviews project concepts, designs, and testing phases. It approves when a project can go into production. The number of phases requiring the committee's approval depends on the project's life cycle, or PLC. The intent is to identify project problems early to reduce costly mistakes. This external project review is an ideal time to examine any security policies issues. Next is architectural review. This promotes standard use of technology and architecture. By creating architectural models to be followed, the organization can more rapidly deploy consistent technology solutions. These models usually have much of the security policies embedded in their design. Consequently, developing standard sets of technology ensures highly reliable and compliant solution. This committee has the authority to stop a project that fails to adhere to these technology standards. External Connection Committee defines how data is transmitted outside the organization. This includes how and what data is sent and received. This committee works closely with the vendor governance committee to make sure no external connections to unauthorized parties are approved. A focus of the committee is the security and reliability of these third-party connections. Vendor Governance Committee has both a business and technology role. The business role is the oversight of the vendor relations. This role ensures that vendors deliver on commitments In other words, this committee ensures that the vendor meets the service level agreement, or SLA, in the contract. The committee also examines concerns about product quality. Security Compliance Committee typically has many roles. One of the key roles is to determine when policy violations occur. The Security Compliance Committee reviews risk and vulnerability assessments. The committee often focuses on pervasive controls. Lastly, we have the Operational Risk Committee, often referred to as Ops Risk, as both a business and technology role. The committee's primary role is to manage risk to the business. The operational risk management makes sure the business is operating within risk appetite and risk tolerance. For example, ensuring proper segregation of duties can ensure that some risks are properly controlled. Here are the frontline managers and supervisors' responsibility and accountability. Let's look. Ensuring everyone on the frontline team is trained and taking on the role as the go-to person for questions, applying the policies consistently, gathering metrics on the policy's effectiveness, and ensuring everyone follows the policy. At the grassroots employees level, you have failure to adhere to policies. They don't fully understand the policy. It is very inconvenient to adhere to. Peer pressure provides a grassroots enforcement method. Rewards can also be a means of policy enforcement. Organizations' right to monitor user actions and traffic, maintaining a productive workforce, detecting when security policies are not being followed, maintaining the security of sensitive data, ensuring quality and protecting the organization's reputation, and avoiding liability from pirated intellectual property such as software and music. Let's look at the primary areas to monitor. They are the internet, email, and computers. Compliance law, requirement of risk management. The legal department is a key stakeholder in creating security policies. Establish a risk management program that ensures security policies address the legal requirements. The risk management program also ensures these policies are enforced and provide regulators with evidence that the security policies help manage risk as well as prevent breaches. Access controls for facilities. Laws establish the legal thresholds. Regulatory requirements establish what an organization has to do to meet the legal thresholds. And security policies establish how the organization achieves the regulatory requirements. What security controls work to enforce protection of personal data? Encrypting data when it leaves the organization's network, ensuring that each user has a unique identity when accessing the data, and granting access for business purposes only, and destroying data when no longer needed. Having appropriate policies and security awareness in place is crucial. What automated security controls can be implemented through policy? Authentication methods, authorization methods, data encryption, logging events, data segmentation, and network segmentation. What manual security controls assist with enforcement? Background checks, log reviews, access rights reviews, and annotations. Legal implications of IT security policy enforcement. Failure to properly retain records can lead to significant fines. Older data should be destroyed only in accordance with well-established policies, and legal implications with security policies come in many forms. Illustration of how data quickly expands. Figure 14-2 looks at this particular issue. Let's consider a simple loan document. Notice from the figure that information from the original document is used to generate a monthly statement. The statement now contains personal financial information. That document in turn may be used to generate a late notice. The notice may be tied to an email correspondence with the customer, and so on. The personal financial information could even be sent to an external collection agency. The data most likely is stored in multiple systems. This is depicted to the far left. Note the information is flowing through loan, customer service, collection, and accounts receivable applications. Who is ultimately accountable for risk, threats, and vulnerabilities? Executive management is ultimately accountable for controlling risk. Accountability can come from external forces such as public opinion. This can turn against a company, leading to a loss of trust that damages or even destroys it. This can damage an organization's reputation. Look at the Target breach, the department store. A huge problem for Target for a long time. Then shareholders vote and are active at the shareholder level. And regulators hold the organization accountable for violation of law. And courts hold executives personally accountable. Employees are accountable for following security policies. Where must IT security policy enforcement come from? First, General Counsel enforces legal binding agreements. The executive management implements enterprise risk management. Human Resources enforces disciplinary actions. Information Systems Security Organization enforces security policies at a program level. And frontline manager or supervisor level enforces security policies at an employee level. Best practices for IT security policy enforcement include: the information security team should review the current legislation that governs their business. The legal department should review all new or major changes to policies. The enforcement of policies is based on risk assessment. Ensure that consequences and enforcement are properly socialized throughout the organization. Use automated controls to enforce policies. Be sure that policies are clear about the use of company equipment. Executive management must set the tone and enforce policy consistently across all lines of business. Let's look at some case studies and examples. Private sector, you had Equifax. Personal information of 147 million people was exposed in this breach. Equifax used default usernames and passwords, specifically admin and admin. This is an example of failure to enforce security policies. Next is public sector. Oklahoma Department of Securities, for example, had 3 terabytes of unprotected data breached due to an open rsync server. This is an example of poor policy enforcement, indicating a lack of the basic principle of defense in depth. Then you have public sector. U.S. Department of Energy, unauthorized access to 104,000 individual personal records. Given that lack of management action is cited as a cause, then lack of policy enforcement as required by NIST standards might be a root cause. In summary, we looked at the organizational monitoring and enforcement of ISS policies, policy enforcement as it relates to compliance laws, legal implications of ISS policy enforcement, and who is ultimately accountable for risk, threats, and vulnerabilities. Thank you so much for listening to all the slides throughout the PowerPoint presentations for this course. Thank you.